Moving on to the last and final segment on today's Zach Kroll Sports Podcast, it is time for our week number 5 NFL picks throughout the first 4 weeks of the season. It has been a crazy start. We have gone 40-24 with a nice 12-4 record. Last week only got a handful of game wrongs, including the 2 New York teams, so I was happy to see both the Jets and the Giants get back to their winning ways. But without further ado, let's see if we can beat that 12-4 record from last week. I'm expecting to hit the music. Week 5 NFL picks. Here we go. Thursday Night Football. This is a big one. Rams, they're sitting at 3-1, heading to the Pacific Northwest to take on the Seahawks, who are sitting at 2-2. The Rams last week played their worst game of the season against the Arizona Cardinals. I was surprised how physically dominated they were from all sides of the ball in this game. They're taking on Seattle, coming off a nice win against the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday afternoon, took advantage of who was ever playing quarterback in San Francisco, whether it was Jimmy G or Trey Lance. And the one thing that impressed me with Seattle in this game is that for the first time all season, they actually got off to a hot start. I guess you could say the week 1 game in Indy, they were good to start, but for the first time in a while, Seattle starts off a game well, and I'm actually going to pick the Seahawks to win this game against the Rams on Thursday Night Football. I think that even though I said earlier on this show, the Rams right now are the best team in the NFL, this NFC West is such a good division that it may not even matter. Like, all of these teams are going to beat each other up, and the more I look at it, I think we may have a hard time seeing the number 1 seed in the NFC come playoff time come out of that division, just because the teams are so good and so close. Seattle, Thursday Night Football at home. I know their defense isn't great, but I'm going to back Russell Wilson and the Seahawks to get the win on Thursday Night Football over the Rams. Let's go to London, baby. 9 a.m. Sunday afternoon before all of the games kick at the usual 1 o'clock slot on the East Coast. Jets, Falcons. Now, the Jets are coming off a nice win. They beat Tennessee, take advantage of a banged-up Titans team, and end up getting the W behind Zach Wilson, who won Offensive Rookie of the Week, making all of the big-time throws, dropping a couple absolute dimes, and really winning that game for the Jets. I know he had many chances throughout the game to get the job done, but ultimately, the Jets find a way in overtime. Randy Bullock misses the potential game-winning kick for the Titans, and the Jets win. They'll be heading to London to take on the Falcons, and look, the Falcons beat the Giants, but we saw last week against the Washington football team, even though the Falcons could score points here and there, I just don't trust this team to win football games. And considering Calvin Ridley and Russell Gage are both going to be out for Atlanta in this game, I'm going to take the Jets to win this game against Atlanta. I think there's some more positive momentum riding with the Jets, whose defense has actually been surprisingly pretty good this season without guys like Carl Lawson and Jarrad Davis. I'm actually going to pick the Jets to go to London and beat the Falcons. I'm looking forward to this one, not going to lie. Even though it's not the 2 best teams in the NFL, as a Jet guy, I think this is a game they could win. And the Falcons beat the Giants, but they haven't done anything else. I'm not impressed with Atlanta. I think they're one of the worst teams in the NFL, if I'm being honest. I like the Jets to go on the road to London in a neutral game and beat the Falcons. Let's move to the 1 o'clock slate. Dolphins, they're sitting at 1-3, heading to Tampa Bay to take on the 3-1 Bucs. And look, I feel bad for the Dolphins because there were plenty of fans that were saying, oh, Tua getting hurt, it was a good thing for Miami. Jacoby Brissett is a pro quarterback who will be able to run this offense more efficiently. I think we saw last week against the Colts, that just wasn't to be, and Miami fell to 1-3. I'll say this about Tampa. Even though they're sitting at 3-1, I have my concerns about this team. I get they have Tom Brady, and I get they are the defending Super Bowl champions. But their defense, unlike last year, is really banged up. And I thought Tampa Bay was able to win that game more because of New England's shortcomings on Sunday Night Football against the Patriots than them just overall taking control of the game and winning. With that being said, I like the Bucs in this game just because I think they are just the better team than Miami. But at the same time, you know, the Dolphins are due for a win. Brian Flores is too good of a coach to have his team at 1-4. And I was just surprised. The Dolphins didn't show up last week at all. They really didn't. I'm going to take Tampa Bay to win just because I think they're better. But Miami, I'm not going to lie, has been one of the more disappointing teams in the NFL. Even if Tua is not the answer, they need their starting quarterback sooner rather than later. Because with Jacoby Brissett, I just don't think they have a chance. And at least if you watch Tua play and it doesn't work out, you will have a reason that's clear and in front of you to move on from the young former Alabama quarterback by season's end. This is a good 1 o'clock game. I'll take the Bucs, by the way, in that one. Bengals, they're sitting at 3-1. I feel like most people around the NFL aren't really aware that right now, yes, the Cincinnati Bengals are sitting there with a 3-1 record. They're going to host another 3-1 team in the Green Bay Packers. And this is a good game. I'm really looking forward to it. I think a lot of points in this game are going to be scored. However, I do think the Packers win. One thing I'll say about the Bengals, by the way, their defense isn't bad. In a similar way to the Jets, their defense has actually been one of the more surprising units in the NFL so far this season, and I think both defenses are a little vulnerable here, even though they're both not bad and both will come to play. I just think Green Bay will make one more play in the end to get the victory over the Bengals, but I'm not going to lie. If you've listened to this show, you know how I feel about Joe Burrow. I think this kid is an absolute star. He deserves to be in the conversation when it comes to some of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. And I can't wait to see him on the same stage as a guy like Aaron Rodgers. I think these two quarterbacks are going to be throwing punches back and forth throughout this, throughout this game. And I think the Packers are ultimately going to be the ones that come out on top and win it. However, of all of the games in the 1 o'clock slate, this may be the one I'm looking forward to the most. I have the Packers barely squeaking out a victory over the Bengals. And Green Bay, they're definitely a team to watch, man. I understand they are not perfect. They have their concerns. But all they do is win football games in the regular season. And they deserve credit for that. Next game in the 1 o'clock slate. This is a big one. The Broncos. They're coming off their first loss of the season at home against Baltimore. However, they're still in a pretty good spot, sitting with a record of 3-1. They will be on the road, heading to Heinz Field, taking on Big Ben and the Steelers. And look, I totally understand that big picture. When you watch the Steelers, it's clear they're not a good football team. And I don't really expect them to be going anywhere this season, no matter what the result of this game is. However, if Pittsburgh has any shot to do anything this season, this is a game they have to have. They're 1-3. If you win this game and get to 2-3, you're only one game behind 500. Who knows? And then you look at Denver. This is a game they need. Because even though the Broncos started off 3-0, their schedule was not good at all. They faced the two New York teams and the Jaguars. Those are games that you should win if you have any interest in being a playoff team. And I'm not going to lie. This game against Pittsburgh, even though Heinz Field is a tough place to play and it's the Steelers, I get it. They're rarely a team that will just lay over and fall down when you count them out. But Denver has to win this game. They're the better team than Pittsburgh. And if you want to make the playoffs, given how Pittsburgh has just, let's be honest, they haven't been able to move the football. Denver has to win this game. I'm going to predict them to do it. But at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't, because the pressure is on them, and really, the loser of this game is in big trouble. Of all of the 1 o'clock games in the first window this week, I think this game has the most pressure on the team that loses. Both of these teams have to be playing desperate and have to be playing to avoid a loss by all means necessary. I think Denver is going to have just enough energy to find a way to win. I'll take the Broncos to beat the Steelers, but hey, I'm telling you once again, if the Broncos somehow, some way lose this game, they may be in big, big trouble. I'll take Denver. Next 1 o'clock game, the Saints. one of the trickier teams to figure out in the NFL so far this season. They're sitting with a record of 2-2. They're going to be heading on the road to FedEx Field, taking on another 2-2 squad in the Washington football team. And this is an interesting game because the Saints have been a little bit up and down so far to start this season at least. They've had some good wins going on the road to New England, beating the Packers in week 1. But then they also got smacked by the Panthers. They also lost last week at home to the New York Giants. And I look at Washington. They're 2-2. They've been very up and down. I was impressed with how they were able to go on the road to Atlanta and get a win on Sunday really out of midair. Like, I don't know how they found a way to win that game. Taylor Heineke pulls one out of his hat again. I am going to take the Saints to win this game. And look, I know it's Washington. You know what? I'll change my mind on the fly. I'll do a quick audible. I like the Washington football team to win this game at home. Give me Taylor Heineke. I know the Washington football team defense has been one of the more disappointing units in the NFL so far this season, but I think at home against a quarterback that likes to turn the ball over like Jameis Winston, they'll find a way. Such a close game that I had to change my prediction leading up to the segment, but I'm going to take the Washington football team to beat the Saints at home in Week 5. New England, this is a game they got to have. They're on the road, sitting at 2-2, heading to Houston, who is at 1-3. And in terms of games you got to win, this is a game the Patriots must have. Davis Mills right now is just not suited to be an NFL starting quarterback. And it's not his fault. He was a third-round pick. He's the third-string quarterback, realistically, for this Texans team. And I don't think the Patriots are very good. Like, I don't expect them to be a playoff team. I think their offense just has a ceiling that is super, super low. I like Mac Jones, but I just think at this point in his career, he is what he is. He's going to give you some easy completions, but I think that's what the Patriots need in this game. Just don't turn the ball over, don't make mistakes, let your running game and your defense do most of the work. I will take New England to get the win over Houston in a game they got to have. First time in a while the Patriots have started off a season losing 3 consecutive home games. They're 1-0 on the road, so I think the road success will continue for New England. How about Philadelphia? They're sitting with a record of 1-3, starting the season off 1-0, but then losing the last 3 games. They're heading on the road to Carolina, taking on the 3-1 Panthers, who just acquired Stephon Gilmore, which makes a really good defense even better. They've brought in Stephon Gilmore and C.J. Henderson since the devastating injury to star rookie corner J.C. Horton went down. And I'm going to take the Panthers in this game. I just think they're the better team. They're the more well-coached team. I trust Matt Rule more than Nick Sirianni. And even though the Eagles' offense looked very good against Kansas City last week, who doesn't look good against Kansas City? I think Jalen Hurts is good, but I just don't know if at this point you could commit to him as your franchise quarterback for the future. And I just think Sam Darnold at home, playing in a favorable environment, playing in a position to succeed with this defense around him, will make enough plays. I will take the Panthers, my sleeper team in the NFL, to get the win on Sunday over Philly, which would put them at 4-1. That would be some heck of a start for Carolina. I can't wait to see them play Tampa Bay. I think those two teams are the 2 best teams in the NFC South right now by a large margin. Those games will be must-see TV. Tennessee, coming off a tough loss to the Jets. They're sitting at 2-2. They will be on the road in Jacksonville, taking on Urban Meyer's Jaguars. And we already spoke about the Jaguars so far on this show. Look, if you're the Titans, I don't care if Julio Jones and A.J. Brown are playing or not. This is a game you just got to find a way to win, especially after you lost to the Jets. We spoke about Zach Wilson and how he put the Jets on his back along with that defense, played really well, and got the Jets a big-time victory over the Titans. But if you're looking at that game from a Titans perspective, that is a game you have to win, and you couldn't get the job done. So that you're going into Jacksonville. I get it's a division game. Jacksonville's 0-4 coming off a tough loss on a long week. So they're going to be desperate. But I just can't pick the Jaguars to beat anyone. Tennessee, even though right now they look like to be the clear consensus best team in the AFC South, I don't know how much that means because I don't trust this Titan defense. I don't trust this Titans play calling on offense without Arthur Smith. I'll take them to win, but I am being careful given what's going on in Tennessee. The AFC South is the worst division in the NFL. Final game of the 1 o'clock slate, Detroit heading on the road to Minnesota, taking on the Vikings. The Lions, when everyone picked them to beat the Bears last week, I was one of the only people I felt like to take Chicago. They folded, didn't really show up, and look, I'm taking the Vikings in this game. This is a game Minnesota needs to have. They were disappointing last week also, considering even though they started off their season 0-2, in another universe, they could have easily been 2-0 if their kicker would have been able to make the field goal from 37 out against Arizona. He missed it, but Minnesota's offense couldn't do anything against Cleveland. I think they find a way to get back on track here in a favorable matchup at home against Detroit. I will take the Minnesota Vikings to win in Week 5, move on to 2-3 over Detroit. Let's get to the 4 o'clock slate. Chicago, Justin Fields is now the quarterback for the Bears of the future going forward. Did Matt Nagy announce, and it really didn't have to be that complicated if you were Matt Nagy. I think Chicago should have announced this guy as their starting quarterback a long time ago, and I was impressed with what Chicago did against Detroit. I think Fields is going to have a good game here, I do. I think he'll be able to move the ball. However, the Raiders will win. I think that the Raiders, they're better than they were in years past. I think the Raiders are going to end up a playoff team in the AFC, but this is a game they need to win. They're better than Chicago, and even though they started off the season 3-0, people forget that 2 of those wins came in overtime. They were competitive against the Chargers, at least in the third quarter of that game. They came back. It ultimately just wasn't enough. I think the Raiders playing in front of their home fans, and it seems like, unlike the Chargers, every time the Raiders move, you feel like they get more and more fans and more support. It's cool to see how big of a brand on a national stage the Las Vegas Raiders really are, and I just think they're better than Chicago. As much as I like Justin Fields, Matt Nagy is still running the operation. I will take the Raiders to get the win on Sunday at home against Chicago. Cleveland, they're heading on the road to LA to take on the Chargers, even though Cleveland may have the advantage in terms of the fans in this game. The Browns, low-key, I feel like not a lot of people know this, have one of the better, bigger fan bases in the NFL. But I'm taking the Chargers in this game at home. I think Justin Herbert's better. He's the best quarterback and really the best player on the field in this game. And even though Cleveland's defense is legit, I think that Justin Herbert will do enough to at least keep that Browns defense honest. He'll put up enough points, and I am obsessed with this Charger team. Brandon Staley, the more and more I look at him, the more and more I like him, and the Chargers are a team that I think could be very dangerous going forward. I like Cleveland. I think these two are some of the best teams in the AFC. I would have them in my top 4, as we saw during the first segment of this show. I will take the Chargers to win a close game over Cleveland, and if you're the Browns, Baker Mayfield needs to play better. It's as simple as that. He needs to go out there and at least give you competent football, unlike what he did against Minnesota last week. Props to Cleveland's defense in that game, but I just don't see them being able to do what they did. Again, I'll take the Chargers to beat Cleveland. Sunday at 4:30, Giants. They're coming off a big win at 1-3 in the NFC East. They're heading to Dallas, taking on the 3-1 Cowboys. And I will say, I think the Giants could win this game. The real question for concern going into the season with the New York Giants was their quarterback, Daniel Jones. Would he be able to play well enough with this defense and Saquon Barkley and a good coach in Joe Judge, based on what many people saw last year, would they be able to win because of their quarterback? And even though the Giants have started off 1-3, I actually think their quarterback has been pretty good and pretty encouraging. He showed some big-time balls going on the road last week and coming back from an 11-point fourth-quarter deficit against the Saints. My problem here is I just think Dallas is better, man. Their offense is better. Their defense is better. Maybe the Giants have a slight advantage in coaching, but with the game being at Dallas, I think Dallas wins and goes to 4-1 and takes real control in this NFC East. With that being said, I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants cover, keep this game competitive, and the Giants showed me something last week. They're at least still playing hard for their head coach in Joe Judge after a couple of just brutal terrible losses to start off the season. Final game of the 4 o'clock stretch, San Francisco. It's looking like Trey Lance is going to be under center for the Niners here going up against Arizona. And look, I totally understand. A lot of people are crowning Arizona as the next best team in the NFL based on the start they've gotten off to, beating the Titans by a lot, beating the Rams by a lot, and Kyler Murray is just so fun to watch. And San Francisco giving Trey Lance a full week to prepare for this game and to build an offensive game plan around him. That might help, but I just like the vibes around Arizona better right now than I do San Francisco. Like, Kyle Shanahan, I love him as a head coach, but over the first 4 games of the season, San Francisco hasn't really been that impressive. Like, they lost and blew that game against Green Bay. Their secondary got torched in that game. I think Arizona has enough weapons to make enough plays down the field here. I think that the Cardinals and Niners defensively are pretty equally, but I'll just take the better quarterback. And even though I love Trey Lance, going on the road in this spot against a really good Arizona team, I will be on the Cardinals to beat the 49ers. Sunday Night Football, Buffalo, Kansas City. This is obviously a huge game. Buffalo needs a win to prove to everyone that they could be taken seriously when you mention them as the top dog in the AFC. I love what they've done over the last couple weeks, but this is a change in level in terms of your opponent. Kansas City, I still think, has the best offense in the NFL. A lot of people are on Buffalo, but I will take the Chiefs to get this big win here over the Bills. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. I do think it's going to be close, and Buffalo, at least going into this one, has the better defense. But Mahomes at Arrowhead on Sunday Night Football in a big game. Andy Reid and Sean McDermott are both familiar with each other. I think it's going to be phenomenal, and I don't necessarily think that coaching in terms of who has the advantage there will be a big factor. So I'm going to take the better quarterback and go with Kansas City to really change the narrative around them in the AFC right now as the top dog. Give me Kansas City at home over Buffalo. Monday Night Football, Colts, Ravens. I will take Baltimore in this one. Even though I do think Indianapolis still actually does have a legitimate chance to win the AFC South, Baltimore at home in primetime, I just think is better. Indianapolis impressed me last week. It was the first time all season their defense really came to play and was really able to win them a game. However, they're also banged up on the offensive line. You hate to see what happened to Quentin Nelson a couple weeks ago. He's out for the future until further notice. And I'll just take the better quarterback in this game at home, Lamar Jackson over Carson Wentz. I will go with the Ravens. To recap my Week 5 NFL picks, once again, 40-28 after 4 weeks of play. We hope to get that record up. I'm going to take Seattle over the Rams, Jets over the Falcons, Bucks over the Dolphins, Packers over the Bengals. We will go Denver over Pittsburgh, Washington over the Saints, Patriots over the Texans, Panthers over the Eagles, Titans over the Jags, Vikings over the Lions, Raiders over the Bears, Chargers over the Browns, Dallas over the New York Giants, Cards over the 49ers, Chiefs over the Bills, and Ravens over the Colts.